He was the most protected inmate in America. Until the cameras went black. When the cameras went black. Hit subscribe before the truth shuts off too, because in this story, the cameras weren't the only thing that went dark. For 5 years, inmate Marcus Hale lived under lights that never turned off. He was one of the most protected, and most monitored, inmates in the United States. Not because he was dangerous. Not because he was violent. But because he knew too much. Before prison, Hale had worked as a logistics analyst for a private defense contractor. A quiet man with a precise memory and no criminal history, until the day he was caught moving classified data he wasn't supposed to possess. Prosecutors claimed he was preparing to sell it. Hale insisted he was trying to expose internal corruption. To this day, no one could agree on who he really was. What they all agreed on was this. If anything happened to him behind those walls, the fallout would reach far beyond the prison gates. That was why he lived in E-Block, a reinforced unit reserved for informants, cooperators, and individuals the government believed could not be allowed to simply disappear. Every moment of his day was recorded. Every step tracked. Every meal logged. If a guard stood outside his door for too long, it went into a report. And then, at 2:14 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, the cameras went black. It started with a flicker. A moment of static. A brief, almost invisible distortion on the screen. Shift Officer Lena McCarthy tapped the side of the monitor, expecting it to correct itself. Instead, the entire feed for E-Block dissolved into a gray wall of noise. "What the f?" she muttered, adjusting settings, rerouting the servers, even checking the cables. Nothing restored the feed. E-Block was blind. Within 90 seconds, the unit's supervisor was called. Within 4 minutes, the warden was notified. Within 7 minutes, the prison went into controlled lockdown. But it wasn't fast enough. By the time the first emergency response team reached Marcus Hale's cell, he was gone. The door was locked. No alarms had triggered. No guards had reported movement. Nothing in the corridor had changed. Hale had simply vanished. The investigators who arrived at dawn were led by Special Agent Dana Whitford, a woman known inside the bureau for two things: patience and precision. She walked the tier slowly, studying every inch of the hallway tiles, every scuff mark, every angle of the ceiling-mounted cameras. "This isn't an escape," she said quietly. "This is a surgical removal." But from who? And why? The first clue emerged just after sunrise. A young technician reviewing system logs called Whitford over. "There's something strange," he said. "The blackout wasn't random. Someone triggered it from inside the security hub." Whitford frowned. "Staff? Either staff, or someone using staff credentials." That single sentence changed everything. If Hale had vanished during a system malfunction, that was one kind of problem. If someone had turned off the cameras deliberately, that was something else entirely. Whitford requested personnel rosters, shift rotations, server access logs. Within an hour, she found her second clue. One of the guards assigned to E-Block, Officer Drew Mallon, had left the facility early that morning. "Sick leave," the log said. Approved at 5:03 a.m. But when investigators tried to call him, his phone went straight to voicemail. When they checked his apartment, the door was locked, his car was gone, and his neighbors hadn't seen him since the previous afternoon. Did he help Marcus escape? An investigator asked. Whitford studied the access logs again. If he did, she said, he wasn't the only one. Because buried in the digital trail, time-stamped exactly 30 seconds before the cameras died, she found an access request from a badge number that should have been impossible. A badge belonging to an officer who had retired 3 years earlier. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't an accident. Someone inside the prison had resurrected that ID. And when Whitford followed the digital path back to its origin, she narrowed her eyes. The signal came from inside E-Block. Inside the protected wing. Inside the same hallway where Marcus Hale had disappeared. And when technicians opened the locked utility closet at the end of that hall, what they found inside changed everything. The closet no one was allowed to open. The utility closet at the end of E block was sealed with a bolt that hadn't been touched in years, at least, according to maintenance logs. Dust should have coated the hinges. Cobwebs should have covered the handle. But as Special Agent Dana Whitford approached, she saw neither. The lock was clean. Recently handled. Deliberately hidden. "Cut it," she said. The bolt snapped with one sharp crack. When the door swung open, a stale rush of cold air spilled out, the kind that comes from a room closed too long, but used too recently. The small space was barely large enough for a mop and bucket. But someone had rewired it into something else entirely. A handheld monitor sat on a crate. A cluster of cables snaked into the walls. A portable hard drive blinked with a green light. And taped to the wall above it was a printed picture of Marcus Hale. The technician exhaled. Someone was accessing the surveillance system from here. Whitford examined the setup carefully. It wasn't crude. It wasn't improvised. Whoever built this knew the prison's circuitry better than most engineers on staff. "Check the metadata," she ordered. The tech plugged in. Lines of code scrolled across his tablet. "This wasn't just a camera shutdown," he said. "It was a full reroute. The footage didn't disappear, it was redirected here." Meaning someone had watched Hale's cell live, moments before he vanished. Whitford stepped back into the hallway. Something told her this wasn't about Hale's safety. Or even his knowledge. This was about control, someone manipulating the most secure wing in the entire facility without raising alarms. "Where's Officer Mallon?" she asked. "Still missing," the sergeant said. "We sent patrols to his family's homes, his usual places, colleagues he talks to. No sign of him." Whitford nodded slowly. Something about Mallon's sudden disappearance bothered her. He wasn't a known risk. He had no disciplinary issues. He wasn't connected to any inmate groups. His finances were stable. No history of misconduct. People like that didn't just vanish, unless they were taken. "Pull Mallon's camera feed from the hour before the blackout," Whitford said. When the footage played, the room fell silent. Mallon walked down E block calmly, clipboard in hand. He checked Hale's door first. Hale was awake, sitting on the edge of his bed, hands on his knees, staring straight at the camera. He didn't blink. Didn't move. He almost looked like he was waiting. Then Mallon stepped out of frame. Seconds later, another figure appeared. A tall silhouette. Broad shoulders. Prison uniform. No, a guard uniform without a visible name tag. The figure stood motionless outside Hale's door for nearly a full minute. Then the feed dissolved into static, the exact second the cameras went offline. Whitford leaned forward. "Zoom in." The silhouette sharpened into a blocky shape, but the face was nothing but a void, as if the camera refused to focus on it. One of the investigators swallowed hard. "We've checked staff rosters," he said. "No one matches that height or build." Whitford clenched her jaw. Then someone used a stolen uniform. Or, another officer said softly, someone accessed a uniform from storage. Whitford turned sharply. "Storage?" "Yes. 2 months ago, a full set of staff gear went missing. Jacket, pants, boots. It was written off as a clerical error." Whitford took a slow breath. Every answer raised a bigger question. Who walked E block pretending to be staff? Who turned off the cameras? And where had they taken Marcus Hale? But the next discovery came not from forensic teams, but from the prison chaplain. He approached Whitford hesitantly. "Agent Whitford. I think there's something you should see." He handed her a small envelope. No stamps. No address. Just a single line of handwriting. He was never meant to stay in that cell. "Where did you find this?" she asked. "In my office," the chaplain whispered. "It was waiting for me when I came in this morning." Whitford opened the envelope. Inside was a thin flash drive. She plugged it in. A single video file appeared. Timestamped the night Hale disappeared. When she pressed play, the screen went black. Then a voice, calm, low, and disturbingly steady, filled the speakers. "He told you everything. You just weren't listening." The audio stopped abruptly. Whitford froze. It wasn't Hale's voice. And it wasn't Mallon's. It belonged to someone she had heard before, somewhere deep in the archives of a case she hoped she'd never have to reopen. The man who wasn't supposed to exist. The voice on the recording hit Dana Whitford like a punch. Calm. Controlled. Familiar. A voice she hadn't heard in nearly a decade. She replayed it, closing her eyes. "He told you everything. You just weren't listening." It was impossible. It had to be. The voice belonged to Elias Boone, a former corrections intelligence officer who vanished after a corruption probe 7 years earlier. Officially, Boone had resigned. Unofficially, he had been the subject of an internal investigation involving bribery, smuggled contraband, and evidence tampering. Before the case reached federal prosecutors, Boone disappeared, no bank activity, no employment records, no trace. The Bureau assumed he fled the country. But now his voice sat on a flash drive found inside a maximum security prison. Whitford snapped the drive from the laptop. Pull every archived reference to Boone. Personnel files. Disciplinary records. Old security footage. Anything that touches his name. Investigators scrambled. Whitford turned to the chaplain. "Who has access to your office?" "Only staff," he said. "I lock it every night." "Last night?" He swallowed. "I did. I'm sure I—" Whitford raised a hand. "It's not your fault. Someone with clearance planted this. That means they're still inside the facility." A tension settled over the room, heavy, suffocating, electric. Someone inside these walls was moving without detection. Someone who understood blind spots, camera angles, routines. Someone who knew how to make an inmate vanish without leaving a trace. The similarities were too sharp to ignore. Elias Boone had once handled high-risk inmates. And Marcus Hale was the highest-risk inmate in America. The breakthrough came at 9:43 a.m. An evidence technician hurried down the hallway holding a folder. "Agent Whitford, you need to see this now." He handed her a set of still frames printed from old surveillance archives. The first photo showed a younger Boone at roll call, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the same type of uniform seen in the footage outside Hale's cell. The second photo showed Boone escorting an informant through a corridor, his shadow long, sharp, and distinct. The third frame made Whitford's blood run cold. It wasn't from the archives. It was pulled from the night Hale disappeared. A silhouette in a guard uniform. Same build. Same posture. Same proportions. Boone wasn't gone. Boone was here. Whitford didn't wait for authorization. Seal every exit. Lock the internal corridors. Boone is inside this building. The warden hesitated. "Are you sure?" "It could be. I'm done with what-ifs." "Lock the facility." Alarms blared. Steel doors slammed. Officers scrambled to checkpoints. Through the narrow slit windows, Whitford saw inmates rise from their bunks, sensing the shift in atmosphere. But while the prison prepared for a manhunt, Whitford returned to the utility closet where the hidden equipment had been found. She studied the walls again, running her fingers along the cold metal. Something didn't sit right. "Why here?" she murmured. "Why this closet?" Then she saw it, a thin seam in the back panel. Barely noticeable. "Get tools. Now." 2 officers pried the panel loose. Behind it wasn't wiring or plumbing. It was an access shaft leading downward, a narrow vertical passage big enough for one person. A faint scrap of cloth clung to a screw near the opening. Dark gray. Utility uniform fabric. Boone's route. Whitford descended first. The metal ladder vibrated under her boots. The air grew colder the deeper she went. At the bottom, her flashlight hit concrete, a forgotten maintenance corridor running beneath E-block. And 20 yards ahead, a door. Whitford approached slowly. A thin line of light glowed beneath it. She pushed it open. Inside was a small storage chamber. Spare mattresses. Boxes of facility records. Cleaning supplies stacked in uneven piles. And sitting calmly on a chair in the middle of the room. Marcus Hale. Alive. Unharmed. Hands resting on his knees like he had been waiting. Whitford exhaled. Hale, what happened? Who brought you here? Hale lifted his eyes. They were steady. Clear. Almost relieved. He said you'd find me, Hale murmured. Boone? Whitford asked. Hale nodded. He told me the cameras would go dark. He told me not to fight. He said he wasn't here to kill me, he was here to save me. Whitford frowned. Save you from what? Hale looked up at her, expression hollow. From the people who wanted me dead before morning. Whitford stiffened. Who? Staff? Contractors? Who's threatening you? Hale opened his mouth to answer, but a loud metallic clang echoed through the maintenance corridor. Someone had closed the shaft panel above them. Whitford spun around. Heavy footsteps retreated into the darkness. Not running. Not hiding. Leaving. A voice drifted down through the shaft, the same calm tone from the flash drive. You're welcome, Dana. Her breath caught. Boone wasn't escaping. He was walking back into the prison. By choice. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for what comes next. Hit subscribe, the truth only gets darker from here.